afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat, and with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other world. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
And unto the angel of the church in Thyatira write, These things saith the Son of God, who hath his eyes like unto a flame of fire, and his feet are like fine brass. I know thy works, and charity, and service, and faith, and thy patience, and thy works, and the last to be more than the first. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio, and as always, we thank all of you for taking the time to join us this evening in live broadcast. I'm especially honored to have with me as guests this evening my children, Justin and Joy Garcia. Are you there?
Yes, we are.
Hello.
Awesome. This is a fantastic honor for me to have you both on as guests and to also be able to share discussion on all of the things that we have been up to as far as a company and a family, and also the other things that you have both been doing in Endeavor over this summer. And so I'm excited first to announce, and actually I'm going to let Joy announce the upcoming convention and the details of it, which will be transpiring here in Atlanta, March 2020 of next year. And so, Joy, if you would lead us into that and the website and where people can go to sign up, and we'll talk about the speakers and topics and all that as well.
Yes, absolutely. Well, first, I'd also like to thank you, Zen, for allowing us to be on this show and being such a great dad, and we're grateful to be here. And so this conference that we have been planning for, we're so excited to announce. It's called Sacred Word Revealed, and the subject is going to be about unveiling end-time mysteries. So we're super excited about it. The exact dates are March 27th through 29th, 2020 in Atlanta, Georgia. And you can find out more information at sacredwordrevealed.com. And that will take you to the site where you'll see all of the speakers. You can also purchase tickets on that site, which right now we're having early bird tickets for $100. It's technically a 3-day event, but it's more going to be like 2 days. We're going to be checking people in on Friday and kind of more like fellowship Friday night. And then Saturday and Sunday will be fully packed with some exciting speakers. And and the hotel is going to be really great because it's going to be at the DoubleTree in Atlanta, which you can book rooms directly on our website. You just scroll down and it'll take you to a link where rooms that are normally can go up to $200. We have gotten everyone's rooms at $109 per night, which we're really, really excited about. That's such a blessing. I know that with all of the conferences that we've been in the past, the hotel rooms can be extremely expensive, and we're so grateful to have it at only $109 per night, especially for a DoubleTree. So so please do, if you could, sign up at sacredwordrevealed.com. Make sure to book your rooms directly on our site for that special pricing. And we'd love to fellowship with you.
Yes. And also for those that are interested in going, which we'll talk about the speakers and all that upcoming, is that we were only able to hold a certain block and to reserve it at that price. And DoubleTree is a really nice hotel, and because we do have a certain amount of rooms we need to fill, we are asking people that are going to the conference to especially make certain that they use the website portal so that it can be a portion to that particular block, and we can fill that first, and then if necessary we can expand and garner other rooms. But
one last thing about the hotel space as well, you can actually do a virtual tour of the space, and what was really important for us is that there was going to be a lot of space for fellowship, because just having been to the past conferences that we have been to in the past year, although the speakers are so great and they're always such a blessing, what's almost even greater of a blessing is to fellowship with others and to hear testimony and to share dialogue with other like-minded people. So just lots and lots of fellowship space was super vital for us. And you can see in the virtual tour that there's just so much space where people can just hang out, sit down and talk to some of their, favorite speakers or each other and create, lifelong relationships. So we're really excited about that as well.
Yeah, and there's nothing like being able to come together and actually speak with, individuals that you research and study that have blessed your life with their books or their radio shows. And a lot of the people that I do know specifically that will be joining us in conference, they are really down to earth, and that they are always willing to speak with, and they honor the people that come up to them and, in conversation and fellowship. And so I'm excited myself to meet a lot of the individuals that do and have followed our work for a very long time, and that this conference is going to be unique in that we're going to be covering topics which are largely taboo, and which a lot of people and a lot of conferences are unwilling to touch or cover in any manner. And I do especially consider some of these topics to be critical, many of them as skeleton keys for unlocking so much that is still hidden within the gospel that does not make sense when you do not look at and examine it in the manner that we will be presenting it and talking about it during the course of this conference, in both as speakers and also in doing roundtable discussions. Like, for instance, many of you that follow my work, and also Dr. Joy, who's one of the authors that publishes through Sacred Word Publishing, you know that we cover in great detail and have covered and elaborate upon the whole enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, which finds origins in the war in heaven and the separation of darkness and light, good and evil, and the division of the forces of Legion and the angels of the Most High God, and that the next stage of this war takes place here upon the earth with the children of perdition and the children of light, and that Christ speaks about this in the parable of the sower, the kingdom, and the tares of the field, where he describes the war, the contest between these two bloodlines and how it plays out all throughout the course of history. He says of the wheat and the tares that when the tares come up and actually appear amongst the wheat, to allow both to grow together until the time of the end. And in the time of the end, that he would send forth his angels as reapers to gather the tares for burning and the wheat for preservation. So this war, which again, for whatever reason, is a taboo subject, and one that very few people speak about and cover in any detail at all. And this is one of the topics that Dr. Joy and I cover in great elaboration she, writing in her 3-book series, Beguiled from Eden to Armageddon, even from that title, you see that it begins with the beguilement, which is the deception, and that's what leads to Eve's impregnation with Cain, who is the progenitor of this particular bloodline. And then the whole thing of the end from the beginning, connecting it from Eden to Armageddon. I speak about this as well in my books, The Great Contest, beginning with the war in heaven, and then the second book, The Enmity Between the Seed Lines, and the third book, which will be the war of the bloodline elites against the children of Adam. And so that's just one of the topics we'll also be speaking about and covering in some manner pre-existence. Gary Wayne will be there, and the author of the Genesis 6 Conspiracy, Yana and Stephen Ben-Nun of Israeli News Live, and they cover in great detail a number of different topics, as well as Stephen having a great grip on what's going on with the world, and because he has all of these connections to the intelligence community, and he still has assets all over the world which give him and share with him information critical to keeping up with current events. And those of you that do follow and know about their work, that they share and are looked to for keeping tabs on what are the harbingers, the signs of the season, that we as watchmen and watchwomen, and even the church, that we are supposed to recognize the signs of the seasons. And then Dr. Stephen Pidgeon, which he has one of the greatest minds when it comes to understanding the biblical materials as well as the extra biblical texts. I mentioned Dr. Joy, who speaks about in great elaboration the serpent seed and other things like the Antichrist, the end times prophecy, and so much more. My son Justin will be also speaking there on the Justin, well, you can talk about the topic when you come up, but specifically about the Isaiah fulfillment, Christ and the signs that were prophetically put forth by Isaiah, and how we know Christ to be Savior Messiah. But there will also be other roundtable discussions, and we will be also perhaps adding other speakers as we increase and know from the amount of attendees that will be going as to how many speakers we can invite and afford to bring to the conference, because we will be paying for their rooms and their flights and getting them there, and a lot will be depending upon how many people attend, and the early bird and those that make commitments, so that we can get an idea of what we have to work with. And so, Joy, let me turn it over to you and get you to comment and share anything that I may have missed, and then we'll go to Justin, and he can talk about what he would like to speak about, and also roundtable discussion or anything of that nature.
You might have already mentioned this. Did you already mention Dr. Stephen Pidgeon?
Yes,
Okay. Well, we're really excited about him coming too, because that was the most recent addition to the crew of speakers, and that was actually through Waywalk. So we met Dr. Pidgeon for the first time, I guess, in real life at Waywalk, and he is such a fun dude, super intelligent guy. And and I think a lot of people already knew this, but we had no idea. But it turns out that he was a paid comedian for 3 years. So he's just a hilarious guy with a lot of knowledge. And and we were able to ask him if he would join, and he was happy to do so. And we're really grateful to be able to add him to the list. And and that's a really good point, Zen, that, the more people that purchase tickets, the more speakers we can bring, will afford to bring on. And I never had really thought of it like that, but that's very true.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and what a lot of people don't realize or know is that, as Stephen Pigeon was an aspiring stand-up comedian. I was an aspiring sit-down comedian. And so just, a little extra there on the side, but just, but Justin, would you like to comment here and also share with the listening audience as to what you are interested in speaking on? Maybe even a couple topics?
Shalom, everyone. I'm Justin Garcia, the biological son of Zen Garcia. And to be honest, I really am wrestling with just one topic to speak on. There are just so many amazing speakers, and we only have a couple days with a few short hours in each day to be able to share time. And I want to cover something that's very unique. So I think in doing so, it is called the Sacred Word Revealed Conference. And during the introduction to the conference, I would really like to speak on the sacred word itself and the sacred name, which we know in the Hebrew is spelled Yod-He-Vav-He, and just how amazingly prophetic that is. And, in the Hebrew, the ancient language is kind of similar to the traditional Chinese language in that every symbol or every written word, it has a meaning, a symbolic meaning. And the Yod-He-Vav-He was a prophecy, as many people know, of hand and nail. And that is a crucifixion statement. It was the name, the sacred word, was a prophecy in itself. So every time we see the Lord in all caps in our Bibles, in our KJV Bibles, that's a prophetic statement. And the name of the Most High that he gave to us was a prophecy of his son coming in the flesh and dying on the cross. And I think that is amazing in itself and very, very, very relevant to the sacred word revealed. And then when we get to looking at the name of the Messiah himself, which was Yod-He-Vav Shin Ayin, which is Yahu, which is very similar to the Father's name. It means hand, behold, nail. And then it says the meaning of the Shin Ayin, the Shah, which means salvation, the meaning of the letters was destroying the eye. So how significant is that we have this pyramid all over and all around the world, the Hollywood worshiping the all-seeing eye. And if you go to Saudi Arabia, that symbology is everywhere. We went to Tel Aviv, Israel, and we're doing ministry in the ghettos, and that all-seeing eye is graffitied everywhere. So it's just interesting to think that was a prophetic statement. Yeah. Just his name as well, when he was just a baby, his name Yahusha was a prophetic statement. And he destroyed, sorry about that, he destroyed the eye. And he is our Savior. He is salvation. And I think that that's amazing. And people are very interested in studying the Old Testament prophecies, but there's just so many of them. I mean, if you look at the book of Jeremiah and, 50 chapters there, and then Ezekiel with his 48 chapters, and just there's so many chapters of prophecy to study. And then Isaiah, he's over 60 chapters. It's pretty overwhelming, Yes. But the Most High gave me interest in these things to go out and to seek the prophecies of the Messiah. And I was able to compile a lot of them and see such a beautiful story that was laid out in the Jewish Tanakh, or the Old Testament, and how everything from the time that creation started, that everything pointed to the Messiah. And all of these prophecies, they have been fulfilled of his coming. Like Isaiah 53 talked about his betrayal by his own people and how he would take on the iniquity of the entire world. And it was fulfilled. And coming from a background of atheism and wandering through the dark for many years and through many religions, I think the relevance of understanding prophecy about the Messiah is something crucial and something that I would love to present at the conference.
Yeah, I think that is really one of the most important issues and one of the core tenets of the faith, which has been largely lost to, this generation and to the modern world, and why so many are atheistic or, believing in scientism and evolution and the whole thing with regard to the Copernican heliocentric model for understanding world that science has led astray so many into believing that, we evolved a monkey and that everything is random and that there's no special significance or anything with regard to the creation of humanity and the world. And also that, like, for instance, we've spent 38 weeks going over, all of us, on Saturdays with the Digital Book Readers Club. The first was the study of the Aramaic and Palestinian Targum. And in doing those studies, going by chapter, verse by verse, all the way through Genesis and most of Exodus, we saw how many numerous times mention of the word of the Lord and allusion to the Savior Messiah are all throughout the scriptures, and that he had personal relationship with the former prophets, patriarchs, and even the apostles during the time of the early establishment of the church and the New Testament. But most people have no idea as to how much and how many allusions to him are included, even in the older translations, the Aramaic translations of the Hebrew Torah, and how all of that has been lost in translating it to the modern English, the King James and the other modern English translations. That all of that has been lost and changed and distorted, even with the mention, as you said, that the names of both the Father and the Son have been taken out and replaced with Lord and God. And that makes impersonal, in my opinion, the deeper, intimate relationships that people are supposed to have with their Creator. And so even just restoring that knowledge, and then also alluding to all of the Old Testament prophecies of the coming of Yahushua as Savior Messiah. But even in the newest book that I wrote on the ancient prophecies of Christ and all the extra biblical texts which also allude prophetically to him, for instance, the book of Enoch and the mentions of the elect one and the Son of Man, that this book was prophetic. And I believe one of the reasons why it was attacked was to hide that the enemy has been working behind the scenes and from the shadows as the eye at the top of the Illuminati pyramid to hide the relevance and how it was that prophetically Adam even knew, being banished from paradise, that Christ would be born of his line and come at a certain time to redeem him, to rectify the fall, and to bring liberty to the captives. And these things being hidden, veiled, and distorted and disappeared, extirpated, that's the reason why so much of the world does not know their Savior Messiah, which is a very sad thing, and why even the Jews now, the modern Hebrews, deny him as Savior Messiah, and that he was the fulfillment, the long waited for Redeemer that's spoken about in their prophecy. So can you comment on that?
Definitely. Well, when the Messiah was crucified and buried, there were some Roman guards that were set in front of his grave, because they were scared that he was going to raise from the dead because they knew the prophecies.
Right.
And when he did, and that miracle happened, when God raised the Messiah from the dead, and the soldiers witnessed the angels that came down, they ran to the leadership of the Jewish faith, and they told them the amazing miracle and fulfillment of prophecies that had just taken place. And those leaders, they responded by telling the soldiers, don't tell anyone what you've seen. Here's some money. Don't tell anyone what you've seen. And it's that same spirit of the Antichrist that was from that time that's still in charge of the people in those days, or from that time even until now, that's in charge of the land of Israel. And it's very sad that they've held this power for so long. And we talked about the name of the Messiah and how he means the hand and the nail that destroys the eye. And he did destroy the spiritual stronghold that they have over the believers. But there is a very physical eye at the top of the pyramid as well. There's a very physical body of leadership that links back to through many secret societies and through a wicked bloodline that have these agreements to really just do evil things to the world in order to maintain their power and their stature over the governments of the world. And with their power, they've done so much wickedness. But just as the Messiah fulfilled the first prophecies of his first coming and came and set the captives free spiritually, he's going to come again. Yes. And we have prophecies, so specific prophecies of how he's going to come and destroy the wickedness. And there's nothing that they can do about it, even though they try.
Right.
Well, like you said, in the Aramaic Targum, they've tried to erase as much as they can from the scriptures that we've received today. But the Lord said that he would preserve his testimony, and that has happened. I mean, even in the KJV Bible that we receive, or the modern New Age Bibles that we have, like, they've done so much to detract from what's in there, and we still have a picture of our beautiful Savior.
Yes.
I mean, that is amazing. So what you do see in the Aramaic Targum, though, is these amazing messianic prophecies that just do not exist in the Torah that we've been handed down. Yes. So it's very interesting to think about. There's one specifically that talks about how the Messiah in the last days would come from Edom, and that was just in Genesis. It talked about a prophecy of how the Messiah would come from Edom. And then we read later on in prophecies from, I believe it was around Jeremiah 48, 49, it talks about the destruction of Edom and anyways, other places. So these prophets, there were concepts in ancient Israel that they knew and that they understood very, very thoroughly. And the prophets expounded on those base prophecies by giving more and more details. But those base prophecies have been erased from our Bibles. And nowadays, for the Orthodox Jews who go to Israel to study to become rabbis, they are not allowed to study these things like the book of Isaiah that tells so thoroughly about the Messiah's first and second coming. But we have a friend who we met in Haifa, Israel, and he was from the New Jersey, New York area where there's a large amount of Orthodox Judaism. And he grew up as an Orthodox Jew. He studied. Eventually, he went to Israel to study to become a rabbi. And when he was studying to become a rabbi, he was in rabbinical school. He was reading through Isaiah for himself because he was a very curious person and he loved the Lord and he wanted to learn as much as he could about him. And he wanted to study the prophecies. And when he got to the prophecies of the Messiah, of how he would be rejected by his own people, and how there would be a son who was called Everlasting Father and Mighty God, and how in Micah it talks about how one would be born in, I think it was Malachi 5:2.
Yeah.
It's about, one born in Bethlehem whose goings forth, or his roots, were from everlasting. So who is this everlasting man? It kind of sounds like the Christian people, the guy that they worship. I'm curious. So he went to his lead rabbi and brought up some points to him from Isaiah, and the lead rabbi told him, "You must not read that book, or you're going to become a Christian." That was it. He didn't give him insight or understanding. So it's really terrible leadership that's been over the Jews, and I feel like, I don't want to offend anyone, but it's similar to the mainstream Catholic Church, where people go to Mass or they go to Shabbat service, and they're excuse us for our kitty cat, they're read to whatever passage the leaders want, and then the leaders give them whatever interpretation they want. And then they go home, and that's the milk that they're feeding on. You know what I mean? And they go, and they don't look for any more spiritual bread. They're satisfied with that. But for those who are wanting meat and really craving the truth, they study for themselves, and just like they will end up being like Tal. And Tal ended up leaving the Orthodox Judaism community, and he became a Christian. So how amazing is that? Glory to the Most High.
Yes, praise God.
Because he studied for himself. He grew up in that whole society, and now he's part of an underground church with
Awesome.
5 people, and he worships the Messiah
Good for him.
with all these people. So it's amazing. But yeah, the stronghold of the physical stronghold of the enemy and of those wicked people, they still have a lot of power over this world, and they manipulate the governments of this world, and they do very, very bad things that are even unimaginable to the masses, because when you tell them that they're doing these things, they're like, no way could that ever happen. There's no way that every war is a banker war. You know, there's an evil country out there that we're fighting to protect our freedom.
Right.
They don't.
Terrorists.
Right. Yeah, but we don't know who the true terrorists are, who the true evil are.
Yeah.
But they will maintain control for a short while. Yes. But the joy that we have and the strength that we have isn't in physical weapons, but it's in the strength of our faith, in knowing that we're saved and that this world is temporary, and that we have an eternal home awaiting, an infinite place of goodness and peace where no evil can ever get to. You know, no death will ever occur there. There will be no darkness. So that's what we long for, and that's where we draw our strength from knowing our Savior.
Yes, that is the promise that we share. That is the good news of the gospel. For people that don't know, even Bethlehem means house of bread, and we know that Christ was the bread of life. And so, all these things, the prophecy, this is just one of the things that we'll be sharing and bringing forth. But the conference is on End Time Mysteries Revealed. And so we have put out a feeler to all of the speakers as to what topics they would like to cover, and the kind of round tables that we'll be able to do as well. And so soon we will be sharing that itinerary, and also that the number of hours the speakers will be from 10 a.m. to, I'm guessing that this is how we're going to set it up, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturday, and then 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Sunday. And so that will be a lot of time for dialogue and to be able to listen in to so many awesome speakers that have so much knowledge on the end time mysteries. And I'm just, looking forward to having just fellowship with everybody and to be able to share meal and dialogue with all of you out there that have wanted to get together and come to a place where you could witness, even watch and catch some of these speakers, because some of them, even like myself, we don't do a lot of conferences. I don't do a lot of traveling because of my disability. And Dr. Joy, she's not been able to do a lot of conferences for a long period of time because of the health of her husband, Mel, who's passed on. And Gary Wayne, I know he doesn't do a lot of conferences as well. So it's going to be an awesome opportunity to gather together with and to watch. And as I said, so many topics where you won't find anybody else covering. We'll be talking about a lot of those issues, and that we will be adding speakers as we go and as we know what we can afford to do, and that the focus will be to bring you critical information so that you can prepare yourselves and your families for those times that are coming. Joy, let me turn it back over to you.
Oh, thank you. Is there what should I talk about then?
Well, let's talk about just you and Justin, the conferences that y'all have done, and what you've learned and what you've experienced, and the kind of things that you've learned and heard, and the kind of things which you think might be of interest in bringing forth in this conference, and as well as why we wanted to do it.
Okay, sure. I'm actually going to go even further back to kind of give people an idea of how Justin and I became so involved with Sacred Word Publishing and with your ministry in general. Awesome. So I'll go back to this past August. We had just come back from all of our missionary work and all of the traveling that we did around the world, and we were getting ready to kind of settle back into the normal 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. kind of rat race situation. And because that was just my natural instinct to just go back to it. And so, of course, I was interviewing daily to go back into a corporate position. And one day I was really trying to just stop. I wanted to stop and really think about what I was doing. And so I stopped and I prayed and I just meditated on the word, and I really tried to figure out what it is that the Father wanted me to do, and what was it in my heart that I wanted in my life. And when I wrote those things down, and when I really reflected it and took the time to write those things down, I realized that corporate life had nothing to do with what was put on my heart. And so I remember at the time I didn't think that Sacred Word Publishing had space for me, and I didn't think, because people are really surprised when they meet us in person and they talk to me and I say that I'm new to your work. They're like, what? How can you be new to Zen's work? I'm like, honestly, before August, you were just, my dad, like my father-in-law Zen. Like, I didn't know you as like the Zen Garcia with YouTube channel and all this kind of stuff. You were just my father-in-law that was a really cool dude. And so I remember you had asked me to at least just join one conference call to see if there was a place for me and see maybe where I could add value. And I remember sitting on that conference call and seeing where all of the things that the company really needed is exactly what I did. And so, so to give some insight, my background is in digital marketing consulting, and that's what I did in the corporate realm for a very long time, and it was so exciting to see that the things that I had learned in the corporate world, I could bring into ministry and use for the kingdom, because I really didn't know that was even possible or how that would happen. And so I remember on that conference call, I remember thinking, oh my goodness, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I prayed about it, and I got really great confirmation, because at the time, one of the biggest reasons that we couldn't, necessarily join Sacred Word Publishing was because we had rented out our room, and their lease was up in our condo, and we would have had to start paying for our mortgage again, and we couldn't afford it with joining Sacred Word Publishing and not being able to take an income. And so I remember thinking like, okay, I want to do it, but now we're going to have this big mortgage to pay, and I'm going to have to go to back into corporate. And then I remember getting like a call literally the night of the conference call that we did, where I thought, oh my goodness, I want so badly to do this, where the current person that was renting the room had asked if she could extend her lease. And that was like a huge confirmation for us, because how unlikely is that? How amazing is it? So that was a huge blessing. And then since joining in August, oh my goodness, it's been quite a roller coaster adventure. We launched the new website, we started new shows, and we started going to conferences, and then we decided to have our own conference, and just, I don't know how many more books we released. So there's a lot more books, and now we're up to like, I think, over 90 titles on our, actually we are at 100. So right now, I just looked at it, we are at 100 products on sacredwordpublishing.com, and that is just, that number is a surprise to me too. And it's just so exciting, such a blessing to be able to help others publish their works, because there's so many people out there that have so much to say, so much research that they've been doing. And as you know, Zen, these publishing companies, they're so expensive. They drain people of money, and and we don't have a lot of time to be able to take on, as many projects as we would like, but we try to take on as much as we can. But it's just been such a blessing to be able to work for the kingdom on a daily basis, and still doing the things that I know that He's gifted me with. And I know, and I've actually had struggle with a feeling of guilt, like, oh, Zen and Justin are such great researchers, and that's just not my strong suit. Like, I'm not a great researcher, and that's not like the interests that I have, or I don't have a very good memory and things like that. But this kind of like, marketing and online, digital stuff is what I can do. And so I'm just so excited to take what I know how to do and what I can do and use it for the kingdom.
Yes. What an incredible blessing that has been. And also, Joy, now in doing the shows in the AMA and, listening to the guests that you line up to come on with me, that has exposed you to a whole other side of, as far as the study of the scriptures and to understanding, the New World Order conspiracies and what we are contending with regard to, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but powers, principalities, rulers of darkness. And even learning about over these past few months, it's been a crash course for you in studying all things conspiratorial, all things esoteric, all things biblical and prophetic, and that it's really exposed you to a lot more than you were aware of with regard to even, like vaccines being dangerous, and with you and Justin, working to having children, that now you are knowledgeable about that and how much that knowledge will go forth to protecting you and family from the dangers of so many things that people are unaware of.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what's interesting is that probably, to be totally honest, in August, I'm not one to judge people on their thoughts, but I definitely, and like, you know, their opinions and things like that in general, but I was definitely like not super 100% in agreement with, you know, all the stuff. I was probably more on the side of like your family, of not quite as extreme, but you know, I was kind of like very much at like, you know, arm's length, like, oh, okay, that's interesting, Zen, that's cool, love you, okay.
Right.
but being, but being kind of, you know, submerged into it, it has really opened my eyes to what I thought and what people now think that we're brainwashed with. Now I kind of look at it like, oh no, you have no idea who's brainwashed.
Right, yeah, exactly.
There's just so much information out there, but it also made me realize how much I trusted the media and how much I trusted what people told me rather than researching for myself, and what actually in reality how the media portrays people who actually look into things themselves and base their judgments and their beliefs on actual facts, how they make them seem so stupid and so crazy, like without actually bringing up any facts. They're just like, oh, you know, those crazies that are anti-vaxxers, or like, you know, those people just want to kill their children and like that kind of thing. And of course that's like just my main thought, like, oh yeah, people that are anti-vaccine, they just want to kill their children. They don't care, or like they're stupid. And that's just without any actual evidence. And so it has really made me notice things in the media when they just kind of glaze over things that I would have never noticed before. And when I hear something, I no longer take it for face value, and rather I ask questions and research it and look at the actual ingredients and what is it really, you know, what is it really saying and doing. And so, yeah, that has been a true blessing in itself to open my eyes to just how brainwashed this society is. But
one other thing, and then we'll go to Justin, is that I wanted to make mention as well as of all of the people that you've developed relationships with, and that you've been able to learn and glean truth from individuals like Jennifer, you know, on these different topics, whereas just hearing me speak about them, that they are still far off and really kind of crazy. But then when you hear others also expound in similarity, you know, sharing revelation on these kind of topics and these kind of truths, that it then really makes you consider, well, maybe Dad isn't as crazy as I thought. Maybe there is some truth to some of the things. And so I think that has also exposed you to opening yourself to, you know, being both open-minded and looking at things in a different way.
Yes, well, it's so funny because now when Justin wants me, like, a good example is styrofoam cups. Every time we're out, like, in public and, you know, they have the coffee and then they have the styrofoam cups, Justin's always like, don't drink out of styrofoam cups. They're so bad for you. Yeah. But I'm, like, so wanting coffee, so I drink it anyways. And finally he messaged Jennifer and was like, Jennifer, tell Joy not to drink out of styrofoam cups.
Out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses.
3 witnesses, yes, shall the truth be established.
So now that's like the ongoing joke where, like, if I don't listen to Justin, he's like, I'm going to tell Jennifer.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Oh, it's really funny. But yes, Justin.
Yes, Justin, if you would kind of talk about the same. You know, we've got just 4 minutes until break, and so we'll pick it up on the other side. But just, you know, talk about the things that you've learned and been exposed to, and the conferences and things like that, and the impact just on your understanding and knowledge. You were already, you know, open to a lot of New World Order and conspiracies and understanding things of that nature, being a researcher for a very long time. But I think, you know, doing the work that you and Joy have been involved in and intimately in the way that it's probably opened you to more and to new things as well.
Definitely. I'm definitely called brainwashed, like Joy was saying. I'm pretty sure my own mother actually believes that I'm brainwashed. But that's okay, because it really is, the masses are being raised and fed from silver spoons, and they only eat what is fed to them. Right. And they're comfortable that way. They're getting fat that way. They're getting fed a lot of yummy stuff. But eventually you realize it doesn't taste that good.
Right.
Something a little sweeter, something real. So it's fine with me that, we fast and that we don't get fed from a silver spoon, and that everyone that really is trying to feed us is actually trying to poison us. I mean, with the whole vaccine agenda, with the whole, you have to rely on the healthcare system, you have to rely on the government. The mainstream news is pushing this narrative of relying on the government when we have just an endless amount of history of the corruption of governments. I mean, right. Nothing new under the sun, except for, well, I guess it's not even new that there's a massive sheeple that are just following the governments and bidding to the wills of their overlords. But it's such a blessing. We're so gifted to be woken up and to have an understanding of what's really going on around us. I mean, it's not everyone that wakes up from the Matrix.
Right.
I mean, most people will never wake up, and most people are comfortable. It reminds me of the scene where in the Matrix, the bad guy, he goes back into the Matrix and he's eating a steak, and he's like, no, it's not real, but it tastes so good. Mm-hmm. Like, that is the majority of my generation, most definitely. But I feel so blessed to have found truth in knowing who my Savior is, and in understanding the history of the world for what it really is. I mean, I'm just blessed. That's all I can say, is that we're blessed to have that awakening, and that our responsibility to try to waken others, it really should be done out of love and out of understanding that not everyone is as far down the path as we are. Right. But to be merciful and empathetic of where they are, and even if they're cursing us and calling us brainwashed, like Joy said, we know who really is brainwashed.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both for sharing. It's wonderful to have you on and to be able to discuss these things. We'll be right back, everybody, for second hour.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
The blessing of the Lord is in the reward of the godly, and suddenly he maketh his blessing flourish. Say not, what profit is there of my service, and what good things shall I have hereafter? Again, say not, I have enough and possess many things, and what evil shall I have hereafter? In the day of prosperity, there is a forgetfulness of affliction. And in the day of affliction, there is no more remembrance of prosperity. All right. Welcome back, everybody, for second hour. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio, and I'm honored to have as guests with me my children, Joy and Justin Garcia. And so I wanted to go back to you, Justin, to give you a chance to speak about just the things that you've learned and also the things that you and Joy have been involved in. And also, if you would, speak about, because a lot of people have not been blessed like both you and Joy to be able to travel around the world and to do missionary work that for several years, both of you took the time to travel everywhere and to take advantage of your mother working for the airline service and to be able to take all these standby flights that you really, both of you, broaden your horizons in a manner that most people never have the opportunity to do. And what kind of impact seeing, people in other parts of the world, how that affected you and what you learned from those travels as well.
Sure. Well, I will start by just giving a little background. Before we came to Sacred Word, we were very blessed with a desire. I was very blessed with a desire to want to know truth and want to research without any type of confirmation bias, but to really come to know an unadulterated truth. And so from an early age, I knew about 9/11 and these government-sponsored terrorism, things like that. And I was pretty interested in the conspiracy realm. But way later, once I came to Sacred Word Publishing, I was kind of like Joy, where I was like, well, my dad talks about some interesting things, but I'm not really sure about that. Like, it's interesting. But I was forced to really open my Bible and consider this thing called the firmament. And I was just so intrigued that there's this sea of glass that's above the earth, that there are 4 cherubim under, that the throne of the Most High is above, and they travel together. And I'd seen, prophetically speaking, this the visions of Ezekiel and John when they went to heaven and they saw the throne and they saw the sea of glass. Some people, they say, oh, the sea of glass is just a bunch of saints, and there's all these different attempts to understand, but when you really put some understanding that the deception goes as far as NASA, you're mind blown that it could be that deep and penetrated into our own government, into our own leadership. Like, I understand the media is business and they're pushing their own agendas with the pharmaceutical companies to make money and to poison people to make more money off of them and to keep us dumb and, whatever their political affiliations are as well, But when you think of the actual government-sponsored, taxpayer-funded NASA lying to us, just how deep does it really go? It just seems like the entire world has been manipulated into believing this false assumption that there's billions of other places just like Earth out there and that we have no significance. And then you get to the root of it all, that it's a spiritual battle. They really just don't want us to understand that we have a loving, almighty creator. That's what it comes down to at its core. So I was blessed to have the opportunity to join you with Sacred Word Publishing, and I believe in the things that come out of our bookstore, and the conspiracies and everything. I believe that everyone should have the opportunity to go down whatever rabbit hole they're interested in. And it's a blessing that we have a place where people can go and dig through all these different rabbit holes that mainstream society calls blasphemy, or calls heresy, or call us brainwashed or foolish or out of our minds, whatever they want to call us. But I like being in a place that's open-minded and supports people that are really seeking. So it's a blessing. And with that knowledge, like I had covered a little bit earlier, we do have a responsibility to share with others. And so I was going to school. I was going to school to be an aerospace engineer, and I was studying because when I was in the military, I served 6 years in the U.S. Air Force, and I was an aircraft mechanic, and I moved into operations. And when I got out, none of those qualifications transferred to the civilian side. So the most that I could really do was like be a gas boy for an airport, like just fill up some gas for the airplanes. And that was basically it. Where when I was in the military, I was an inspector for $235 million aircraft. I was given so much responsibility. I had so many credentials, and then it was all ripped away. So when I got out, I ended up in school to try to regain some of those credentials, and it was just absolute nonsense being in the university system. So I thought, all right, well, this isn't where I was called to be. I just can't deal with it anymore. Like, I was really interested in studying calculus and things like that, but all the other the prerequisites and all those, it was just stupid. I just felt like I was being indoctrinated with all of these theories and this agenda to push us to believe that I came from a monkey or an ape or whatever, this whole evolution theory. And I just thought that I can't be here any longer. So I dropped out of school and I started studying, and we started Sacred Word Publishing. And then I was just moved to travel. This was around the whole September 23rd, 2017, stuff, where everyone was believing that the first part of Revelation 12 was taking place, and this huge luminary sign was all unfolding, and the Feast of Trumpets was coming. This was like the first big hype in the Christian community for the Feast of Trumpets, which we know is possibly a prophecy of when the Messiah will return. Mm-hmm. So I was really moved. I had all this adrenaline every day. I was like studying. If Revelation 12 does fulfill on this day, what's going to happen? Like I don't understand what's going to happen. Everybody believes this heavenly sign is happening, but what really is going to happen on that time? So I started getting really deep into the messianic prophecies of the return, and it come to find out that prophecy that was in the Aramaic Targum in Genesis about the Messiah coming from Edom, it's actually related to in the Old Testament scriptures, as well as Revelation, I think it's 19, when the Messiah comes with a bloodstained garment. It speaks of multiple times how the Messiah is going to return to Edom, and there are all these prophecies of this greater exodus that's going to occur in the end times, and how the serpent is going to attack Israel. And we know in 2 Thessalonians 2, it says that the false one, the serpent, the son of perdition, is going to sit on the throne of God and claim to be God himself. So I had to go to Israel, and I was just called to go to Israel and let them know, like, guys, this false Messiah is coming, and you're being bred to worship him. You all are just being led astray to accept this false savior. Like, look at the prophecies, guys. Read it with me. It's so obvious that the guy that people call Jesus Christ, or in Israel right now they call him Yeshua, he was the true Messiah. And he fulfilled the prophecies. He even fulfilled the prophecies that you would betray him. And they're like,
right.
we would never do that, you know. So I'm really heartbroken that there are still so many people that were unable to reach, but we did. We were called to go to Israel. We went twice. We went on the Feast of Trumpets on September 2017, and we warned people that there was a war coming to Israel, and that Israel would eventually get overtaken by this false Messiah. And it is unfortunate that they still they want that Messiah to come. They still want him to come. But while we were there, we also got to meet a lot of Arabs, and we got to visit what they call now Palestine on the West Bank and in Bethlehem, and even on the Mount of Olives, it's considered Palestinian territory. Everything to the east of the Temple Mount, you know, they divide it right there. So we got to visit a lot of Arabs, and there was actually a ton of atheists in Israel as well, which made me really piece together that the same leadership, the same government over Israel is the same leadership and government that's over America. And I didn't really put that together yet, but now I understand that, you know, the latter-day Babylon has already conquered the Holy Land and already established their presence there. And now we know that false Messiah is at work. And even in Revelation 2:9 and 3:9, it says, "Behold, I know of those who say they are Jews but are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan." Mm-hmm. And sadly, the leaders over there have done a great job in leading very, very many souls astray.
Right. Yeah, it says, you know, in the scriptures that that ancient dragon, that old serpent who deceiveth the entirety of the world, and how most of mainstream Christianity is involved in idolatry. You know, most people don't even read their Bibles, so they have no idea as to what is being spoken about in the end times, which, you know, 1/3 of all scripture is written about the fig tree generation, the end times and the last times. And I do absolutely believe we are in those times. And so, but I wanted to bring up something. I remember that you and Joy were living here with me, and I was just now coming to discernment on the biblical cosmology, and I was deciphering the book of Enoch, the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries, and explaining flat earth cosmology to you. And during that time, you were my greatest opponent, challenging me in so many ways, you know, with regard to me having to really know and understand what I was talking about. And as I was learning it, and how you made me grow so much with, you know, knowledge of this particular topic, and then for you to come to discernment on these things yourself. But you know, you've always have studied to show yourself approved, and you've always challenged me in the things that I believed I knew and understood. But it's such a beautiful thing that the Most High has led both you and Joy to discernment on so much of that, you know, the revelations that I've come to understand, and how we as a family now understand that, you know, we're not the ones that are crazy, but it's the rest of the world. It's really a nice thing to be able to share in discussion the things that we are able to talk about and able to share with the rest of the world, and to be a family of those that are awakened, and having both the burden and the blessing of being a watchman to the world, and how we've embraced that role and that mission, and have dedicated ourselves through Sacred Word Publishing to servicing the kingdom and the Most High, and in such manner. It's just, you know, for me, there's no greater fulfillment than to have both you and Joy doing the work that I so long ago decided to, commit myself to. And so I'm so very grateful to have both of you working in the capacity that we do work together in this way.
Very
It's just
best.
a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a majority of the world, when someone does wake up, they're all alone, and it is
Right.
very lonely, lonely time in a dark world, and people get overwhelmed. But wow, we really are. We're so blessed to have one another, to be as iron sharpening iron, and
Right.
to fellowship together and worship together, and to call upon the name of the Most High together is it's nothing but a blessing.
Yes, and to pray together before our meals, and even when we travel, that we include prayer so deeply in our lives. And can you talk about, Justin, the Digital Book Readers Club, and also, what we are doing, in invite, everybody to join us on the Saturdays that we're now studying the Great Commission, and then we'll go back to Joy.
Definitely. Well, the Digital Readers Club was something that came to my mind shortly after we got involved full time with Sacred Word Publishing after returning from our mission trip. And I had a dream. Basically, I was laying in bed, like half awake, half asleep, and it was kind of like a memory of going to Bible study, like right after I had came to Christianity when I was 19, after having studied as an atheist and being a evangelical atheist for most of my life. When I came to Christ, I went to a few churches to try to test the waters, and even though I didn't agree with everything that was going on with, the Easter eggs and Christmas and all those things, and just the basics that were there, I remember the fellowship, and it was something that was touching and something that changed my life. And I wanted to have something like that with Sacred Word Publishing. And it was just a very intimate Bible study that I remember, where I walked into this room at a church that I didn't know, and everybody was just surrounding this big table, and we all took turns reading and sharing and discussing. And that, to me, that was like real church. That was more church than when we sat in the actual church hall for an hour and listened to a guy speak. To me, the real church was when we got together and we fellowshipped and sought truth together. So in having that memory, it came to me that we could do that online. And then I fell asleep, and I woke up the next day and I totally forgot. And then about halfway through the day, I thought, I had a really good idea yesterday, something that I was really passionate about, something that I wanted to do, and I just can't remember what it is. So I was just thinking and praying. I got into the shower, and that's where I like to really pray because it's my alone time. And I thought, if the Father wants me to do this, He's going to bring it to my remembrance. So please, Father, let me remember what this is. And then those words, the Digital Book or the Digital Readers Club, came to my mind, and I thought that's it, the Digital Readers Club. So we established the Digital Readers Club with Sacred Word Publishing, and we meet once a week on Saturdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to read together. And the original idea was to have a book of the month, and each month we would change books, and we would just read from those books and study together and have fellowship together. And we even pray together at the end, because for the past 39 weeks we have really developed a family with the people that are there. And we're always wanting more people to come. So please, we encourage you to come. We live stream on the Zen Garcia YouTube channel. And we also, on there, you'll see a link to our Discord, which is the actual chat server that we use. And everyone takes turns reading. We have lovely friends from South Africa, from New Zealand, from Tanzania, from all over America. We just have an amazing fellowship every week. So it originally started, we wanted to cover the Aramaic Targum, and like I said, it was just going to be for 1 month that we were going to do the Targum. Because the Targum is an amazing book. It's one of, if not the oldest copy of the Torah that we have. That covers an amazingly immense amount of detail that just didn't preserve until this day. And it contains a lot of prophecies, and it's just another witness to what we received. So that was definitely our book number one. But after 1 month passed, we were just so in love with that study, with studying Genesis together, that we couldn't stop. So yeah, we went for like, what is 38 weeks. That's like 5, 6, maybe 7 months that we went. I can't even do the math. 9 months that we went studying. And it was really interesting that we went all the way up into Passover. And when Passover occurred, we started covering the Passover story in Exodus. And I thought that was so awesome. That was amazing confirmation.
Right.
And then we got up into Exodus 20 and we covered the 10 Commandments. And it was really, really a beautiful study. But after that, I felt that it was time to move on to another book, and we put out a poll to everyone who receives our newsletter or participates in the study, and the Great Commission series was by far the most highly recommended by everyone. So we got into that. We started that last week, and it is really awesome because now we went from Genesis and Exodus and reading the beginnings of things, and now we're reading the beginnings of the church age and the original apostles and their acts of how they were as missionaries in the early ages of the church, and the love and the mercy that they displayed to the Gentile nations, just as we do now when we go out and we share the gospel. So it is a blessing to read through this. I don't think that we're going to spend nearly as long in the Great Commission series as we did in the Targum, but the studies are just as fruitful, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And it's a beautiful thing to see because, in the King James, we have one book of Acts, but in the Great Commission series, we see a lot of these books that were preserved by the church fathers in the ante-Nicene dialogues that most people have never heard about, and to look at and examine in detailed manner. Well, first, the role of women also in the early establishment of the church, but also that the interactions, the relationships amongst the apostles and the obstacles that they had to overcome. Like, for instance, the city of the man-eaters that Andrew and the other prophets were sent to, and how they were very frightened to go there and to preach to these people that were cannibals and that were known cannibals, but how Christ had appointed them to do so, and just so many stories that are not recognized and made mention of, how they worshiped this ancient serpent, just like in the story of Bel and the dragon in the Apocrypha, where Daniel killed that ancient serpent. These kind of things which are largely overlooked and not understood about the early church age, the kind of evil, the idolatry, and how the devils possessed and spoke through these idols. And so it's intriguing study that we are now involved in. And so please, if you can, do join us 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. on our Discord channel, and that's every Saturday. And you can find a link on my Facebook page at Zen Garcia as well. And I'll also post a link in this show description to our Discord and And so the fellowship is beautiful as well with all these people from all over the world and studying chapter by chapter, verse by verse. It's an awesome thing as well. And so, Joy, I'd like to turn it over to you and ask you how you have benefited and been blessed by our initial study of the Targum, because you were not familiar with the Targum or the great detail that comes forth when studying the Targum, and in doing the 39 weeks of where we shared fellowship and study of it. What do you think about it, and how did it enrich or bless your life?
Sure. Well, I first want to mention that if people want to just listen in on YouTube, you can also just go onto the Zen Garcia channel, like right at 7 p.m. Eastern time or 10 minutes beforehand, and there will be a live link that is like waiting, and it begins, and then it will go live on YouTube, and you can join us there as well and join us on the YouTube chat. But that being said, that this whole Digital Readers Club has been such a blessing to me, and I don't have like a ton to add, but it's so cool to listen to both you and Justin and others in the group just bring in so much details, not even just in the Targum, but other ancient biblical texts that basically fill in possible gaps or anything like that. And to enrich this story with so many different resources is such a beautiful thing, because it really just has solidified the fact that, Christianity, Jesus, these are all not things that just a story, but it really happened in history. And the analogy that I now use when I explain to people about extra biblical texts is that, in any kind of history or any kind of event that happens, and so like, let's say, for example, even when like a big event like 9/11 happened, the whole world was talking about it. The whole world was filming it. They were writing about it, not just one source. And so, of course, naturally, there's going to be a lot of other extra biblical texts because Jesus was real and he was doing some insane things. And in the times that he was alive, the whole world was talking about him, which is a testament to how real he is, because even just so many different sources talking about him. And so the way that I say it is that if you only trust one source, like the Bible, it's kind of like, only trusting news that comes from CNN, but like anywhere else is not allowed. But I mean, which means just saying that there's just so many people that talked about him, and it's cool to really truly see the whole woven kind of pattern and history of it all through the Digital Readers Club. And that has really definitely, solidified my faith, understanding everything. And now when I talk to even just friends that I meet through whatever, I naturally end up talking about it. So tonight we actually ended up having our first Bible study in our house, and we invited some friends that I had just naturally met, and just, I can't help it but talk about our testimony and the real history behind the Bible and things like that. And people are so curious because you don't learn stuff like that at churches. Mm-hmm. And so tonight was a huge blessing because Justin basically just laid out a couple of different historical, non-Christian sources, as in just historical documents that talk about Jesus and the history of it all. And you can see, even our friends' faces and just the interest there and just the fascination, because people aren't talking about it in churches, but there's so much fact and reality and history in the Bible, because that's what it is. It's a historical document.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I make mention of when talking about the extra biblical manuscripts and why I believe that we should examine and look to them for extra detail on what was going on during the church age, and also with prophetically how Yeshua was the long-awaited Messiah, is even in looking at and studying about his early childhood, and also of the story of Mary and how she was very special, and that, she was chosen vessel for him to come through in Immaculate Conception, but that, she spoke with the angels, and she was raised in the temple, and how she was a perpetual virgin. A lot of people don't realize that Joseph, when he became her guardian, that he was already an elderly widowed man, and that he had children that were older than Mary, and that she, taking on and becoming a mother to some of his younger children, that they were the ones that were the brothers and sisters, and also became the apostles to Christ during his life when he was doing his ministry. And so in the King James version of the Bible, we have one story of the time when he was 13 years old, and he had left and went back to the temple, and then Joseph and Mary, having to retrace their steps, went back to Jerusalem and found him teaching the elders there, and that they were all awestruck at the authority of his teachings and the knowledge that he possessed. And that we see in the infancy gospels and the stories that not found in the canon, which describe his early childhood, how he was not even, he did not go to school, because every instructor that they took him to was just overwhelmed by his knowledge, and they found that they couldn't teach him anything because he was more knowledgeable and had greater wisdom than any of them did. And they found that really he could teach them more than they could teach him. And so this also is elaborated in great detail within the infancy gospels that were written majority by two of his stepbrothers, Didymus Thomas, who was called the twin, and James, who wrote the Protevangelium. And so we compiled together in book form Yahushua Christ, the infancy, early childhood, and lost years. And that particular book in and of itself, it's 400 pages of information about stories that not found in the canon, give us greater insight into who our Savior Messiah was, and how even as a young infant he had authority and was God incarnate. He was not just a regular human being, and he didn't somehow later in his life come to anointing, or that he was some special teacher, but he was truly God incarnate from the moment that he entered. Even being immaculately conceived, he was very much different than, because again, he was the prophetic fulfillment of God coming and entering into flesh form to redeem not only the children of Adam, but all of humanity. And so reading these texts, we recognize and are forced to acknowledge such, which I believe the study of these ancient manuscripts, about the lost years and the early childhood, the infancy of Christ, that it would establish without a doubt that he was the true Savior Messiah, and that that's why he is known as the way, the truth, and the light, and how salvation only comes through him, because he was unique in the history of humanity as being the fulfillment of the prophecy that was given to Adam of his coming and the purpose of his coming, that the promise was made that he would enter into flesh, and then upon dying on the cross, which was also prophesied, that he would then descend down into Sheol and break open the gates and the doors of iron and free them from the bondage of Sheol, and redeeming them to their first estate, take them and restore them to their bright nature and allow them to enter into paradise, their former estate. And so these things only he fulfilled. And so reading and understanding and coming to knowledge of these kind of things, it helps to bring to greater understanding all of these concepts and why it is that the world, and those especially that recognize him as Savior Messiah, why, we worship him and why only he is worthy. And so let me get Justin to comment here, and then we'll catch up on a couple more other topics since we're quickly running to the end of the show. Justin?
Yeah, I was just speaking at the Bible study that we did today with a woman who is a second generation Chinese, and she asked, when did Jesus come to know that he was God? And it reminds me of this video I saw a long time ago when I was about 19, and it was a video about the Bible codes, and there was some guy who was referenced as the Antichrist or something, and when you looked him up, he was some guy from Mexico or South America, and somewhere in the Latino area, and he had a church of people that he had basically become a millionaire by telling people that he was Jesus Christ reincarnate. And, there's a lot of churches like that all over, but he was being interviewed. I wanted to see what he had to say. So he was being interviewed by this news reporter, and she asked him, so how did you, she said, why did God choose you to be Jesus Christ? And he said, I don't know. And you're like, all right, this guy, that's basically the same idea that Christians around the world have today. They don't understand the relationship between Yahusha and Yahweh, and the understanding of, that they are one, and that right. Yahusha is Yahweh incarnate in the flesh, fulfilling the role as the Son.
Right.
So,
and the Levitical feast days, all of that as well.
Definitely. Yeah, but what we were saying about the stories of the Messiah's youth just being absent is a very big deal. Mm-hmm. There's just so much information for us to find. Like Joy was saying earlier, when something big happens, there's narrative about it all over, like everywhere they went. And I definitely think that that's the case with the entirety of the life of the Messiah. So what a blessing it is to live in the age of information where we have access to all the different churches and all the different languages, and we can communicate together and bring about manuscripts that were lost or hidden or forgotten for 2,000 years, and take from those to reaffirm our faith and to strengthen the understanding that we have about the full narrative. So it is a big blessing.
Yes, so absolutely.
One of the biggest things that I think people think that the Bible is just a fairy tale book, even as Christians, when they read through the story of King David and Goliath, and think about giants, and how in the world could there really be giants?
Right.
No way were there ever giants. There's no way that in the Vatican archives or in the Smithsonian Museum that there's any type of huge bones hiding anywhere. That's not something that the government could cover up.
Right.
But it's found everywhere. Joy told you, I gave a presentation today to the people that came over about the Greek, Roman, and Syrian narratives from the historians who mentioned Christ. in his life. And one of them also, he gave a narrative that there was this thing called the Emperor's Menagerie, Caesar's Menagerie or something like that. And this was from like 100 AD. And he talked about how there were all these stories that giant bones were found. And the giant bones were taken to the Caesar's Menagerie where nobody would ever see them again.
Wow.
It's the same thing that's happening today. If they find something like that, it's not going to be presented to the mainstream world. And the people who talk about it, you're crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I want to just talk about Genesis 6 real quick.
Right. Yeah, it's so important.
In Genesis 6:4, it says there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, and the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. So this word, sons of God, is Ben Elohim, literally sons of Elohim, which is El, our creator.
Mm-hmm.
Sons of God. It's used a couple other times, only found in the book of Job. And in Job, in the early chapters, we see that Satan is at a council at the throne of the Most High with the Ben Elohim. So these Ben Elohim are clearly not just, the sons of God like Adam and his children. These were angelic beings, the sons of God.
Yes.
Now, the word for giants, when it says there were giants in the earth in those days, that word is Nephilim. And I'm sure everyone's familiar with that word, right? Nephilim. But the root word is Nephel. And it literally means to fall. Or you could say the fallen angels. So there has been this war going on for so long, like pre-flood, there were the fallen on the earth in those days.
Right.
And also after that. And they've been at war with mankind. They raped our women, they took our wives, and they bare children into them, and they gave birth to this hybrid race of giants or Nephilim who, they towered above men, and they interbred with even animals, and they did all these evil things. And we're at the culmination of this deception, and we're at like the end game. We're at the finale. They've been working this deception of a gigantic universe with aliens and things like that since the beginning. And we've been blessed to be warriors of truth, of the Most High, to be used in this end time. We were born for this age, and we are blessed to be here and to be able to brand the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of the Most High. And it's important for us to remember just how deceived the world is, and just how effective our love can be. Love can overcome all things. Love can cover a multitude of sins, is what it says. When we love the sinners that we meet in our life, when we love the Nephil, or the fallen that are around us, it really makes an impact. And that love is something that most of the world does not have. It said that the love of many would wax cold, that people would just lack love in the end times. So we, as knowledge bearers of the truth of the Most High and of salvation, it is our most critical duty to love one another as we love ourselves.
Yes.
Even if we don't love ourselves that much, we gotta love other people. Like we have to serve one another, and to see them as people who are able to receive the same grace that we did. Because we are, all sinners that have a background and have a history of before we came to the Most High. We all have performed evil in our lives, but we receive grace. And in Romans 5:8 it says, God commends his love towards us, and that while we were sinners, Christ died for us. He loved us when we were sinners. He still loves those sinners. So let's love them too. So I just want people to understand the fullness of the deception that's going on. And with that said, I just want to introduce everyone to the ministry that Joy and I started to kind of break away from the doctrine-based theme of Sacred Word Publishing and the historical side. We started a ministry called N-Gen that's focused on the N generation and specifically targeting the young adults and the youth with a missionary-minded aspect of holding the gospel, holding the truths, but being effective in our sharing of that truth. So with N-Gen, you can find us on YouTube, ENDGEN, and we interview missionaries, we interview people who are from various backgrounds to share their testimony, and we also do videos of tips to effectively share the gospel. And we're relatively new, but we would appreciate if you went and subscribed and checked us out, and prayerfully you'll receive the heart of love and a real desire to go out to the nations or just to your workplace and to reach the people that are coming into your life. Like, sometimes you're not going to change the world just with your story of what you believe, but you will change the world with how you act and how you love people. And when they see that light that's inside of you, they'll continue to observe you and to observe your life. And then when you love them and make a relation with them, that will open up the opportunity for your testimony to be effective and to actually take root in that person who knows that you actually care for them and that you love them. So love sinners just as God loved us when we were sinners. Prayerfully, we'll be effective in our with the talents that were given to us.
Yes, absolutely. And two things that I want to quickly make mention of, and then we'll get a final comment from Joy, is the Genesis 6 narrative. That was one of the things that when I first read it, I was absolutely mind blown and intrigued to learn more. And that's one of the things that fueled and inspired my interest in extra biblical manuscripts, because I wanted to know more, and was led to, like the book of Enoch, to understand the fallen angels' interdiction into the affairs of humanity, and how the giants, the men of renown, the cannibal giants, which have been warring against humanity since their first presence here in this world, how they became the spirits of darkness, because having no part in salvation, that they are the shadow entities which would still work even in this day and age against us. And so that was one of the things that I wanted to know about. But specifically with your work, you enjoy doing N-Gen, that this generation, it says that, truth would become something that not a lot of people would really understand, and that there would be so many deceivers in this age that there would be this great falling away. And we know that amongst the millennials and your generation and those, the younger, that so many people are deceived and lost. And as you yourself went through, have embraced a spirit of atheism and a denial of that there's any significance or any truth to the Christian faith and the doctrines which tell us about Christ as Savior and Messiah, and that it is through him that salvation that he has granted us and extended graciously to all of us everywhere, chance to be in eternity with him. But that, this is something of great importance for all of you to really work on and teach. And so I'm glad that you have done that. But Joy, we've got just a couple minutes remaining, and I want to give you a chance to comment on NGen and also, just whatever you would like to share in the last couple minutes here.
Sure. I think Justin covered NGen pretty well. On top of it being for people who need a heart for missions and being able to share, it's also a great place for people who are maybe even slightly confused about their faith, and they have faith, but they're not fully certain in it, and they're not solidified in their faith because maybe they need more logic-based, facts and ammo or whatever it is. That's also a great resource. NGen is. And another thing that I would like to mention is our Ask Me Anything series that we do together, Zen. That has been such a huge blessing, and that has been also a new thing for us this past year. And it has greatly benefited us personally, I would say, even not only in the fact that the questions that come in are really wonderful and edifying and great, but also in that we no longer are, hand typing emails.
Yes, I would think
with paragraphs of answers where I'm, typing your answers, and that has really helped a lot. But also it's just so much fun to get the amazing questions from the listening audience. So if you are listening and you do have a question for these Ask Me Anything shows, please do email us at sacredwordpublishingllc@gmail.com. And we do those bi-monthly. And if you want to make sure not to miss out on a future episode, feel free to check out zengarcia.com. And if you scroll down, you'll see his full calendar actually with all of the shows that he's doing. And on there, you will also see all of the guests that he will have on his Thursday shows. And another great place to find out more information about what we're doing on a daily basis is signing up for our newsletter. And you can do it on our website, sacredwordpublishing.com. And once you do that, you actually also get a coupon for $5 off of your first book. So we'd love for you to join us in fellowship in all of the different ways that you can. And that is all I have. Thank you.